All right. So let's talk now about the actual playoff matches this last weekend. And we'll kick it off with what I said on Twitter was probably one of, if not the worst playoff match I have ever seen in terms of quality. It is, of course, TSM versus 100 Thieves. It was so bad. And I was tweeting, I was, I was tweeting the lyrics to Papa Roach's Last Resort, saying, cut my life into pieces. This is NA's top four. And then people were reporting my tweets for suicide risk. So I actually started getting emails from Twitter, which are very supportive, by the way. And if you are in a dark place, like I said on Twitter, there are professionals you can reach out to for help on this. But this is what fans were interpreting from my tweets and from watching the game was that, guys, but you don't have to worry about me. I'm fine. See, the thing about this is I can always just turn off the TV and the despair will end, right? I can go watch some other playoff games in other regions and the despair will end. So I have a way out. Don't worry about me. I'm okay.
Here's the positive though, Monty. There's a silver lining to the match of 100 Thieves TSM, and here's the silver lining. Anytime someone, because y'all are bad at doing this, I know how to actually attack people's points. Anytime anyone wants to make the point to LS not to go too ham, that draft is everything, this series proves it, mate. Like, literally, this looked like TSM was trying to make a point just to LS that they could draft doesn't make sense and still win the game. You know what I mean? Like, 100 Thieves didn't even matter if 100 Thieves looked like they had won a draft game, like they were never going to win in the actual server. It was like fucking outrageous.
This was so painful because it looked like this could have been 100 Thieves 3-0 and probably should have been. Yes, great series. TSM getting 3-0'd.
That would have been hilarious. I would have been the biggest 100 Thieves fan for a weekend.
It makes no sense. And they won the 100 Thieves had some draft wins because it looked like you're just watching the same game over and over again where 100 Thieves gets all the dragons. Somehow TSM manages to win. It defies the logic of the game. It's like, oh yeah, this team drafted for good early game. They got counter picking lanes, shoving lanes. They're going to get the dragon scale and win. And so you're watching it. Okay, 100 Thieves. Fourth Dragon Soul, yes, they finally did it. Lose the team fight to TSM, lose the game.
I like how they would lose. They would just into team fight at 23 minutes every game, or just give up Baron either through a steal or for TSM sneaking it with 3 people after 2 of TSM's players dive bot in that last game. They would be on Soul Point by 20 minutes and still somehow just not be able to wait long enough to not int. The whole thing was just so fundamentally mind-boggling. You see Someday in these great matchups. Like, what's your take as a top laner looking at what was going on? Because it was just this Jace Gnar matchup for 3 games in a row. Tell us about that matchup and how you think it should play out.
I mean, historically, the Jace is supposed to be diving the Gnar, right? And we saw the Jace being dove by the Gnar by level 4. I wish we had ProView still so I could see it exactly.
I know, me too, buddy.
Exactly how it went. So I could either flame Someday, for not playing right, or praise Huni for playing it really well. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see all of it, but it defies the logic of how the matchup is supposed to go. I have heard a lot of people say that they think Gnar actually starts winning after Ninja Tabby. But in the early lane phase, Jace is supposed to be super far ahead, which we never saw. But the fact that they kept doing it and that Huni kept on blinding Gnar, they didn't ban Jace, so they left it up. It's like, that means they didn't give a shit, man. Either Huni's going, he can't play it, or they believe in the matchup is not that one-sided. So, I mean, it's just pretty funny that they do try the same thing 2 times and it doesn't work again, and then they tried a 3rd time.
Well, what's also just wild to me is that they kept picking Nidalee and Gnar together often, especially in game 1 with an Orianna. As a Nidalee, where do you gank in these solo lanes? This is atrocious. You shouldn't be getting pressure. You shouldn't be getting kills. You shouldn't be losing the 2v2 in these scenarios. So I don't even know what the draft strategy was or why this priority was existing on these particular champions, especially blinding them, like you're saying a lot of the time.
I think it's just a Spica's preference and in nothing more than that, because like you said, when you pick Nidalee, you mainly want to have some kind of setup in the mid lane, right? Like in top lane,
Renekton,
you can have the Renektons or anything with CC really. And mid lane, it's a little harder right now, but you could do Nidalee Syndra, and more common than not right now is Nidalee Lucian, something like that. And that's not for setup in the lane. That's just to get priority and invade in jungle. But you're right, like they didn't have setup in the lanes, right? And so it seemed like TSM would pick these champions, wait for 35 minutes to play the game, and then just have a team fight and somehow win because 100 Thieves fucked it up. And so the draft itself didn't make sense, but the wins kept coming, so they kept doing it, right? And to them, it's what isn't broken, or what isn't falling apart to the ground and into the trash compactor. Don't change it. Don't fix it.
What I find so frustrating about this is because TSM changes their players, they change their coaching staff, but the way that if we rewind time to last summer, and I was so frustrated because TSM kept winning because every team would just fall on their face and just not punish.
They
like
get for some
mid.
reason. They always, some reason in the, like, I know exactly what you mean from that, exactly that playoffs. It's like every time TSM was about to lose the game, it's like they just had a button that was like, make the enemy, mind control the enemy into to us.
Yes,
they were like, you know what, press the button. We need to get back in the game. Because the same here, you're right. Every time they're down in the game, the other teams, even Team Liquid was doing it in that season. Team Liquid won. Like, let's just give them a bunch of free kills for no reason when we have like map control, vision, everything you could need. It's one of those areas, by the way, where that's one thing, because actually LS has very similar thinking to you in this sense, Monty. When people can't understand that they're ahead in the game and they even control the factors that keep you ahead in the game and just opt into fights that are like 50-50s. I'll never understand that ever, mate. I mean, maybe it's because I come from games like fucking Quake, StarCraft, where you, like, the whole time you're cognizant of who is in control of the game, and if you're in control of the game, like how you can lose the game effectively. What's weird is in NA, it's almost like because they're ahead, they think it's even better to take wild fights because I'm slightly ahead. But that's actually a terrible reason to take a fight if you're winning the game.
Well, the funny thing is that when you have Dragon Soul, those 50-50 fights are supposed to be like heavily in your favor, even if it's 50. So it goes from 50-50 to like 80-20, but still somehow, despite that, it's an L for the team fight. It's like they took a 90-10 fight, right? And lost it every time. So it defies the logic, right?
Yeah, I know. And what's funny about these two is like I felt like Ryoma was kind of the reverse of Someday this game, when a lot of these games, like, he was doing okay. He was holding up at least in the laning phase, whereas Someday, was playing questionably these matchups. But Sunday's Jace in some of these team fights was like legitimately pretty good the way he was playing them out. And he was getting triple kills or like bringing them back into the game, even when he did suffer an early deficit. Ryoma, on the other hand, I don't know why, like, I understand why you would put Someday on Jace, especially in this matchup, to punish the blind Narpik, right? Okay, I get it. But Ryoma's not a player that has been playing a lot of AD carries in the mid lane. So to start your first two games and have his kind of abysmal teamfight performance on these champions, and then go down 0-2, keeping in mind that they could have won either of these games if they had performed as a team, and then finally switch him back to Orianna and take a relatively convincing third game in this series, it's just a mystery to me. Like, I don't understand their game plan coming into this week, because if the logic here, let's just go through the logic. If the logic to playing Ryoma is, okay, we want to play control mages, we're playing into this guy's specialty because it suits the meta, then why do you start your playoff best of 5 running him on 2 AD carries, right? Because at that point, why don't you play Damonte? Is the
because
question.
We don't live in a world where anyone actually is coaching a player called Ryoma, Monty. They still think, after fucking like 11 years of competitive League of Legends, that this is Magic the Gathering and their deck has the strong character in it. So it's like, but I must pick Lucian, it's really strong. Now, not for your team, it isn't. You understand that? Maybe an AD carry. Not in mid lane, it ain't. So I don't ever want to see it on your team, 100 Thieves. You don't have the player personnel.
And so my biggest problem with that, and I've discussed this before, is that, and you said it before, when you play Ryoma, you're switching stylistically of what you were known for early on when you were playing with Damonte. My biggest problem with that is that when I see 100 Thieves play these kind of slow control mage style where you play, you scale and play for team fights, they can do that, but they do it worse than like the other top teams, right? And so I liked it when Damonte was in because at least they had their own style, right? They were pretty good. I'd say they were pretty damn good about doing those dives in the early game. And when you plan on playing Jace the entire weekend, right? You played 3 games of Jace. Doesn't it make more sense to revert back to kind of that old style where you're going around playing top dives or bot dives? So stylistically on their draft, it didn't make sense on why they played Ryoma. And I don't know if Ryoma played any Twisted Fate to split. I know he picked Twisted Fate during the Immortals when Immortals had that fire and or maybe it was just like a drill where they had to leave and remake the entire game, and they remade the entire draft. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Yeah.
So they showed that they were willing to play Twisted Fate, but I don't know if they ever brought it out after that. And it's so strange to me that they went from a team that seemed like they were so good at this one style. And who cares if that's your one-trick pony style? I mean, even, FunPlus Phoenix kind of played that style the entire time of Worlds, and then they won.
Well, different meta, to be fair.
Yeah, it is a different meta.
So let's be clear. FunPlus Phoenix would not have won Worlds had that not been the meta. Right. I think we can say that.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm not saying that would make 100 Thieves the best team in NA.
Yeah, of course
but
not.
I think it's better than having them be like the 4th or 5th best control mage team fighter team.
Sure. But at the same time, I totally agree with that point. I just don't think that they would be fundamentally better. Like, do we think that they could have won this series with Damonte? And what's the ceiling? Like, for me, I expected them to be a top 4 team coming in. They are a top 4 team. Do I think that they could have won this series with Damonte? I still would favor TSM coming into it. So, I mean, what kind of difference in performance are we talking about, right? My issue is the following. Like, my issue is if you want to play Ryoma, don't play him on 80 carries. Commit to the mage strategy, right? Commit and like don't play someday on Jace top with these fragile team compositions when your team just gets caught out in the mid game every single time. And I think the other flaw here that you're looking at is, okay, so they did have very good early objective control. They were threatening Soul or Soul Point many times throughout this series. In fact, getting Infernal Soul, still losing with it, right? So I look at this and I say, okay, where is going to be the upside here? Because let's say you're playing a scaling control mage in the mid lane, but your team throws in the late game. How do you win with that? Whether you're having Damonte or Ryoma.
Dude, so you're playing against Power of Evil as well, so all you're doing is just playing against an even better scaling fucking control.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what's the upside here?
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? Is that basically TSM is the better version of this version of 100 Thieves. And so you can, I think that you either like take the wild card and you try and run with Damonte here, but in the end, I really don't think that there was a lot of upside. And I think, in fact, 100 Thieves, like we said, could have 3-0'd this series with Ryoma. All they had to do was not just run it down in some of these team fights and take the advantage that they have. So to me, as much as, it's Ryoma did have kind of a bad performance, especially in game 1 and game 2 on the AD carries, which I disagree that he should have been on in the first place, but I wouldn't start out with that strategy. Right? I don't come into, if I'm a coach, if I'm Zix and I'm coming into these playoffs, my game 1 strat is not Ryoma on an 80 carry. Right? Yeah. That's what doesn't make sense to me.
One thing I've always found weird as well, by the way, Monty, is like one area that's always been very different between East and West. It's like, this, like a lot of the really great Korean teams, what they like to do if they think they actually like are the better team in a best of 5 is they'll start game 1 with like the most like vanilla draft they have. Because what they actually want to see is like, what is your draft strategy and where are you strong and what are you willing to flex out? And then they'll adapt as the series goes on. I've noticed Western teams always try to come with something wacky in game 1, like it was a best of 1 still. Like, to me, that's whack because put it this way, right? If you try the cheese strat in game 1 or a weird pick, you have no A/B testing if it fails after game 1. Like, you're just back to the complete drawing board of chucking everything you plan. Like, that's something you pull out. Like, if you're down 2 games, it's game 3 and you want to surprise someone, Like, I even think as a metagame strategy, it's quite poor, like, approach to the game in general.
I agree. I mean, how would you have approached this best of 5, Alorum?
I'm trying to think about it because I think there have been a lot of teams on Thorn's point that do look for this cheese strat on the very beginning. I know we didn't do that, at least on any teams that I had before. In fact, I can think of a best of 5 series I played in the past when I was on Echo Fox still, where we were down 0-2. And that's when we decided to bring out Draven, right? And I think that actually might be a better choice because that gives you momentum back. And momentum's such a big thing in these best of 5 series.
The confidence of your secret pick.
Yeah, exactly. And then they start banning it, right?
But here's the thing, Alorum. Orianna was not a secret pick.
Orianna was not secret. In fact, if they had secret picks, it was probably the ADs, right? They were like,
exactly what I'm saying.
So, I guess it's all up to their practice, right? We don't know their practice. They could have been practicing these ADs the entire time for the past couple weeks. And so they finally bring it out on stage. And when you are in that situation and you're losing, like, you're panicking. It's like, well, fuck, our practice isn't working. Let's just go back to our control mages and scale. So in my head, that's what happened, because I can't imagine a team wouldn't have practiced it a lot and then just picked it on stage, because, you know, it is a good meta pick right now, is playing ADs mid with things like Lucian and Tristana are so good right now. So in my head, it's just that they panicked and, like, it stopped working. And even though their draft ended up a little weird, where they got the insane early game and they have the Dragon Soul, like, their team fights aren't that great because they have this Jace that didn't get that far ahead. And, you know, while Somedays is a very good player in team fights, it's not like he had the economy to do as much as he could have had they played the comp a little bit better toward the Jace side. So at the end of the day, they get to this game 3 and they're like, whatever, man, let's just put Ryoma back on a control mage. That's what he team fights better with anyway. I don't think his Tristana is, you know, that great, or Lucian is that impressive. So, and after that, they're playing on pure instinct. At least that's how I feel like. It's just, okay, let's play how exactly the basics of the game and see if we can win. And they're not really thinking much past that. And at least that's the way I'm seeing it when I'm watching the series.
Yeah, I think too, for me, the most frustrating aspect of this entire series was game 4 as well, when they had such a clear-cut advantage, and they head into this fight in the mid lane, and it looks like they catch Spica, and then Huhi just ults him out of the fight, and so they can't actually finish the kill, and then they get wiped out after they have this huge kind of advantage. And theoretically, like, they should be like they'd handled the Nocturne pretty well, all things considered. Right. I mean, he's just going to get some kills. That's what happens with the ult. But, you know, I was looking at that team fight thinking that this is for sure going to be 100 Thieves victory. And then it just seems like their coordination or their communication is off, and they can't even catch the pick that was just kind of delivered to them as well.
Which is really strange, because Set has been one of Huhi's best picks. Past. And so it seems like that's what I'm saying. At the end of this series, it seems like they're just playing on instinct, and they don't really have a set plan, or, you know, maybe they've got some nerves going on, because going down 0-2 and trying to get that reverse sweep is very nerve-wracking on a player. You just, you know, your heart is pumping the whole time, and you never want to make that mistake, but then you do, and it's just like, well, fuck, man, I ruined it.
I was just shocked, because I would have thought, coming off of the game 3 win and then them being up with such a substantial, I think, advantage in game 4, they would have been feeling very, like, confident and comfortable about, okay, let's close this one out. Let's go into game 5. We've got the reverse sweep. Come on. And so it was really shocking to me. It was really shocking to me. It is what I think. Yeah.
You never know what they're feeling, but if you think about it logically, right, they won the game, and then they've got security on the next game, so they can start playing a little bit more relaxed and focused, right? You can win by doing the basics. You don't have to do anything fancy.
Yes. Yeah. Then, you certainly don't have to force things, especially when your opponent is kind of walking into you and giving you those opportunities. It's just a complete throw.